In this video, I'm going to be talking about the reality of overseas football trials and why you should probably lower your expectations. See, so many of us, before we go overseas for a trial, and I am including myself in this because I did this exact same thing when I was trying to become a professional player, we over-expect how we're going to be treated overseas, what the life is going to look like for us when we're trialing overseas, and so many other variables that when we get there and we're hit with a wall, like it almost feels like you get hit by a truck because nothing is as we, imagined it to be before we get there. And it happened to me, it happens to so many players, and it's something I don't think is getting spoken about enough. But first, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alan Derrida. I'm a full-time football agent and the founder of Australia's largest player agency, Elite Football. I've helped hundreds of players with representation, and we currently have the biggest roster of professional clubs with over 25 professional clubs that we work with across Europe, South America, and the UAE. So whether you've been overseas for a trial before or you haven't, usually what happens is this. A player will start to think, okay, I'm about to go trial with a first, second, third division club, whatever it is, and you start to envision what that's going to look like. Oh, I'm going to get picked up at the airport by them, and they're going to pull the red carpet out for me, right? And that's where it starts. And then you start thinking, okay, and then the residency is going to be amazing, this 5-star facility where it's gonna have the best gym and it's gonna have the best food and everything's gonna be catered just to my liking. And you start to sort of walk your mind, I don't know why players do this, I did it as well. You start to sort of walk your mind on increasing your expectations for this club like super high. And we do that as humans in general, right? But in this case specifically, what that does is it almost kills us mentally before we even get to where we need to get to, right? So in life, doing that is going to kill your experiences of things because your expectations are never going to be met regardless, right? And so if you expect nothing, you can never be upset, right, with what you get. Just like, if you expect something from a friend or a family member, like sometimes that stuff is just not going to be met, and you'll probably realize that you should probably stop expecting things in general, right? But when it comes specifically with football, and especially for my younger players, you think that all this stuff is going to happen for you. You think that the club's going to pull out this red carpet, it's going to treat you like a king, that you're going to have the, the best of the best of the best, right? And that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, not even like for amateur players going to trial at a professional club. I also have spoken to players that are professional, and when they do that transfer from a pro club to another pro club, and they do the same thing in their mind where they have their expectations so high with how everything should be laid out for them, that we forget that on the other side, it's just humans, right? And it's just employees just doing their job, just doing what they need to, not thinking about those above and beyond things that you probably are thinking of. And so it may not necessarily be that people don't appreciate you or don't want you there, or, just because your expectations aren't being met. It's really just because the other party isn't seeing things the way you're seeing it, right? And that's what I try to tell sort of the pro players when they sort of have like a bit of a kerfuffle with stuff that happens in moves. And it's even worse for amateur players because you have no experience with it and you expect that the club's going to treat you so well, and really at the end of the day you are just another number. And the clubs are never going to treat, especially amateur players coming to trial, with the best of respect, right? So players that I send overseas to clubs get a level of respect and get a level of care, right, that maybe others may not, because they work with my agency, because of the relationships that I have with the clubs and what I demand from them. But in most cases, clubs just don't care. You are just another number, right? And you're there to impress them, not them to impress you, right? And I think that's a key thing that players miss. And so when you get there and all of a sudden the common thing I have is players start to complain about their rooms being small, or maybe they don't like the food, or like they're not used to maybe the Spanish style of food, and it's like, well, you're in Spain, like they're not just going to start cooking whatever you want. There's all these little things that tend to pop up from players because their expectations were so high, whereas I think if we can talk about this more and you can understand that your expectations need to be really low for what it is you're going and what you're getting yourself into, then you're going to meet almost halfway when you get there, and you're not going to have such a hard time mentally, because a lot of these players, when you get over there, and I know that when I first did my first trip, I had my expectations so high for what it was going to be like that, and when I got there, like the residency was super tiny. My room was barely fitting a bed. I had like tiny room and it was shared by like 4 people, you know, just horrible stuff. Like the shower was only ever cold. Training was like terrible, like all this stuff that luckily my players don't have to experience it because I make sure that they don't have those experiences. But for me especially, my expectations were so high and they were met so much lower that I cracked. You know, my first 2-3 nights I pretty much cried myself to sleep, right? Because it was just that overwhelming type of feeling that I gave to myself, really, because of the expectations that I had. And so understanding that you need to way lower your expectations for what it is that you're getting yourself into before you go overseas, before you trial, is only going to help you, because you might lower it so much that you get there and you go, oh wow, actually this is great. I like my room. I like the training. I like the way I get treated. The food's pretty good. You know, this is fun. I get to be in a residency with boys and play football all day, every day. That you're going to then perform better than a lot of other boys that, you know, they raise their expectations and they just see the negatives in every single thing, and that's just not going to allow them to perform the way they should perform. And so that's something I think no one really talks about, is how quietly players will build something up before they get there. And that is probably a bigger indicator to why they're complaining or why they're struggling overseas and why they struggle to adapt than anything else. Because this is something that you just do in your mind. Like, you're not talking to someone and being like, yeah, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and all this stuff. It's just something you slowly do in your mind before you get overseas, and then the bubble sort of pops when you're there. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video, consider sharing it with a friend or dropping a like or subscribing even. It's free and you can always change your mind.